There is a moment after Fajr when the world is still quiet, when the heart is soft, when the soul is most honest. It is in that fragile silence that Allah invites you to ask to return to trust again. After Fajr, your dua is not just words. It becomes a confession of your wounds, a surrender of your fears, and a declaration of your hope. This is the time when Allah reminds you that nothing is too heavy for Him, nothing too broken for Him to mend, and nothing too delayed for Him to deliver. So ask. Ask with the certainty that the one who lifted the darkness from the night can lift the darkness from your life. Ask with the faith that the one who brings the sun every morning can bring clarity to your confusion, healing to your hurt, and blessings you never even imagined. When you raise your hands after Fajr, you are not just making dua. You are placing your entire life in the hands of the one who never fails you. And when Allah decides to change your life, He doesn't need permission, resources, or time. He only says be, and it becomes. So pray that dua after Fajr consistently, sincerely, wholeheartedly. You will see how Allah shifts doors, people, situations, and paths in ways that reveal His mercy, His nearness, and His perfect timing. Hold on to that dua. Hold on to Him. Everything else will fall into place. The quiet after Fajr is a divine invitation to reconnect with Allah. It is a moment when the world has not yet demanded anything from you, when the noise of people, responsibilities, and distractions has not yet arrived. It is a time when your heart is naturally softer, more awake, more aware of its neediness. In that stillness, Allah gently pulls you back toward Him, not through force, but through tranquility. The silence after Fajr is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with mercy, filled with an unseen spiritual light that settles on the believer who pauses long enough to feel it. At that early hour to feel it, your soul recognizes something your body often forgets, that true peace comes from returning to the one who created you, sustained you, and never abandoned you. When you sit after Fajr, before the world begins to chase you, you are gifted a window where the veil between your heart and its Lord feels thinner. This is the moment when your heart whispers truths you often ignore in the business of the day. The truth that you are dependents of the day, that you are fragile, that you are in need of guidance, forgiveness, and stability. And in this neediness, there is no shame. Instead, Allah honors the one who comes to Him early, before seeking anything from dunya, before depending on anyone else. It is as if Allah is saying, come to me first, before you turn to the world. Let me fill your heart before anything else tries to take its place. There is a reason the Prophet taught that the early morning carries blessings. In the quiet of Fajr, the heart becomes a vessel capable of receiving those blessings. You begin to see your worries with clearer eyes. Problems that felt overwhelming in the night begin to shrink when placed beside the greatness of Allah. After, your dua carries a different weight because your heart is not distracted. It is sincere, humble, and aware of its own weakness. And Allah loves when His servant calls upon Him in weakness, not because He wants you to feel small, but because He wants you to finally let go of the weight you were never meant to carry alone. When you raise your hands after Fajr, it is not just an act of worship. It is an act of surrender. You are saying, via Allah, I tried to control everything yesterday, and I failed. Today, I hand it back to you. You are acknowledging that the one who brought the dawn can bring light back into your life. You are trusting that the one who never sleeps is protecting you while you sleep, guiding you while you wander, and holding you while you break. This moment becomes a spiritual alignment, a realignment of your inner compass back to its true north. The quiet after Fajr also has a cleansing effect. It washes away the residue of yesterday's disappointments, mistakes, guilt, and emotional heaviness. In this moment, Allah gives your heart a reset. Whatever felt too tangled becomes manageable. Whatever felt hopeless becomes open. Whatever felt delayed begins to feel like a divine orchestration rather than an obstacle. This is the time when Allah places sakina, inner tranquility, into the hearts of those who seek Him sincerely. It is the kind of peace you cannot find through people, achievements, or material comfort. It is the peace that comes from knowing you are seen, heard, and understood by the One who knows you better than you know yourself. Reconnecting with Allah after Fajr also strengthens the soul for the rest of the day. When you begin your morning, your heart carries a quiet strength into every conversation, every challenge, and every test. You stop reacting from fear and begin responding from faith. You stop being shaken by people's opinions and become anchored by a deeper certainty. The person who nourishes their soul after Fajr walks through the day differently, not because life becomes easier, but because their heart becomes steadier. This divine invitation is not just a ritual, it is a mercy. Allah chooses you every morning. He waits for you every dawn. He opens the door of dua before you even speak. The question is, will you step into that silence? Will you let your heart be softened, healed, and lifted by the One who never withholds from those who come to Him with humility? In that sacred quiet, after the final words of Fajr prayer, Allah is closest to the one who remembers Him, and in that remembrance, everything in your life begins to shift, not because the world changes, but because your heart does. Dua in this time comes from the deepest, most honest place in the heart. At this early hour, when the soul has just risen from sleep and the world has not yet touched you with its noise, your heart is naturally more truthful. It has not yet been clouded by the expectations of others or the weight of the day's responsibilities. There is something profoundly pure about the dua you make after Fajr, because it is not shaped by frustration or the urgency of problems that stack up throughout the day. Instead, it comes from a place of sincerity, vulnerability, and clarity. It is the heart speaking before the mind interferes, before doubts whisper, before anxieties begin their usual cheese. It is a conversation between you and Allah that feels raw, unfiltered, and deeply intimate. At this moment, the heart feels what it often hides to, its fears, its hopes, its longing to be steadied by something greater than anything in this dunya. And when you raise your hands after Fajr, that inner honesty flows through your dua, because this is the time when the soul is most aware of its dependence on Allah. You are reminded that you cannot fix everything, cannot control everyone, cannot see the whole path ahead. You realize that strength is not found in pretending you're capable. It is found in admitting you're not and turning to the one who always is. And that confession, soft whispered, sometimes tearful, is one of the most beloved forms of dua to Allah. For He loves the heart that comes to Him broken more than the heart that pretends to be whole. In this sacred stillness, your dua becomes a mirror. It shows you what you truly carry inside the unresolved pain, the silent prayers, the forgotten dreams, the fears you never voice out loud, the gratitude you rarely express, and the longing for healing that only Allah can give. And when you pour these inner truths into your supplication, you are not just asking Allah for things, you are presenting Him with your heart as it is, without masks. That honesty is what transforms dua from a routine request into a deeply spiritual moment of reconnection. There is a different kind of courage that appears after Fajr. It is the courage to be honest with Allah in ways you are not even honest with yourself throughout the day. You might find yourself asking for forgiveness you didn't realize you needed, for guidance you didn't notice for peace you didn't admit you were craving. You may feel emotions rising unexpectedly, tears that surprise you, relief that overwhelms you, or a sense of calm that settles slowly and quietly. This is the heart recognizing its true home. This is the soul speaking to the one who understands its language better than any human ever could. And the beauty of dua made after Fajr is that it does not need eloquence. It does not need rehearsed words or beautiful expressions. It needs truth. Allah responds not to the perfection of your phrasing, but to the sincerity that rises from the depths of your being. A single honest sentence said after Fajr can carry more weight with Allah than pages of dua said without present. Because what matters is not how much you say, but how deeply you mean it. And it is in these early hours that meaning flows naturally, effortlessly, genuinely. This is also the time when the heart is free from the emotional clutter that burdens it later in the day. The disappointments, arguments, stress, and distractions have not yet arrived. The heart is cleaner, softer, and more receptive. This makes your dua not only more sincere, but more aligned with your true needs. Sometimes you ask for things you think you want, but after Fajr, you ask for the things you truly need. You may find yourself asking Allah for strength you didn't know you lacked, clarity you didn't know you were missing, or healing from wounds you didn't realize were still open. That is the power of early morning dua. It reveals truths that daylight hides. There is also something deeply spiritual about knowing that while the world sleeps, you are speaking to the Lord of the world's flames. It creates a sense of closeness, a sense of being seen and heard in ways that feel profoundly personal. You begin to feel that Allah is not just listening, but responding. Through calmness, through reassurance, through the subtle lifting of heaviness from your chest. It is in these moments that dua becomes not just a request, but a healing. And when you finish your dua after Fajr, there is often a silence that feels different. It is a silence filled with hope, with trust, with surrender. You rise from your prayer knowing that even if nothing has changed around you yet, something has changed inside you. The dua you made from the deepest part of your heart has already begun its journey toward Allah, and Allah, who is closer than your jugular vein, has already heard it in full. That alone brings a peace nothing in this world can offer. Allah can change any situation, no matter how impossible it feels. Sometimes we look at the circumstances of our lives and feel trepidant, as if the walls are closing in and every path forward is blocked. We convince ourselves that the problem is too big, the heartache too deep, the loss too permanent, or the burden too heavy. We begin to believe that our story has reached a dead end. But what we forget is that we are looking through the limited lens of human ability, while Allah is the one who creates possibilities out of impossibilities. He is the one who parts seas, softens hearts, transforms destinies, and brings light out of darkness. What feels like the end to us is often the beginning of something written with divine wisdom. There are moments in life when you feel you have tried every door, knocked on every opportunity, and used every bit of strength you had left, yet nothing changes. This is usually the moment Allah is preparing to show you that change doesn't come from your effort alone. It comes from His command. You may think the situation is fixed, that the pain will stay forever, that the disappointment will not ease, that the person will not return, that the hardship will not lift. But Allah is not bound by logic, time, or human limitations. When He decides to open a door, it opens in ways you never imagined. When He sends relief, it arrives faster than you could prepare for it. And when He heals a heart, He heals it so gently and so completely that you forget it was ever broken. Often, Allah allows situations to become impossible so that you stop relying on your own strength and start relying on His. When everything around you collapses, that collapse is not a punishment, it is a redirection. It is Allah reminding you, I am the one who brings ease after hardship. I am the one who holds your future. I am the one who can change everything with a single command. What is impossible for you is effortless for Him. The door that seems permanently locked is a door he can open without effort. The burden you can't carry is a burden he can lift in an instant. The fear that consumes you is a fear he can replace with tranquility. And the brokenness you hide from the world is a brokenness he can turn into strength and wisdom. Sometimes what feels impossible isn't the situation, it's your belief that it can change. You've been disappointed so many times that hope feels dangerous. You've waited so long that patience feels like defeat. You've cried so deeply that healing feels unrealistic. But Allah doesn't ask you to see how things will change. He only asks you to trust that they can. Faith begins where logic ends, and dua is the bridge between your helplessness and His limitless power. Think of the times in your life when things unexpectedly worked out, moments you didn't plan, blessings you didn't ask for, solutions that appeared out of nowhere. Those weren't coincidences. They were reminders that Allah has always been guiding you. If He carried you through past trials, what makes you think He won't carry you through this one? If He has opened doors before, why assume He won't open another? If He has healed old wounds, why doubt that He can heal the ones hurting now? Sometimes Allah changes the situation. Other times, He changes your heart so you can endure the situation with strength, patience, and wisdom. Both are miracles. Sometimes relief comes externally, and sometimes it comes internally through a sudden calmness, a shift in perspective, a softening of grief, or a burst of hope that wasn't there before. That is also Allah changing everything. And often, these internal changes are what prepare you for the external ones. When you feel stuck, remind yourself you are dealing with the Lord who revived barren lands, who guided lost hearts, who answered the du'as of prophets made from the depths of despair. No story is too complicated for Him. No wound is too deep. No sin is too heavy. No dream is too distant. Allah is capable of rewriting your life in ways that surpass every expectation you hold. But for change to come, you must turn to Him with a heart that believes, even if that belief is small, trembling, or tired. Allah does not ask for perfect faith, He asks for sincere faith. Even a small amount of trust placed in the hands of the All-Powerful can transform your entire life. And sometimes, the very impossibility of your situation is what pushes you to make the most heartfelt dua of your life, the kind that breaks you open, the kind that reaches the throne, the kind that becomes the reason everything shifts. So never say, it's impossible. Instead say, Va'Allah, nothing is impossible for you. Because when Allah decides to change your situation, He doesn't need time, resources, or permission. He simply wills it, and it becomes. Consistent, sincere dua after Fajr brings clarity, calm, and spiritual strength. When you return to Allah every morning, even when you're tired, even when you feel numb, even when you don't see immediate results, you are shaping your heart in ways you cannot see yet. You are planting seeds in the unseen world, seeds that will eventually grow into certainty, resilience, and tranquilities. There is a spiritual discipline in showing up for Allah at the same time each day, especially in the early hours when your body craves sleep and your mind wants comfort. This quiet consistency builds a connection with Allah that becomes deeper, steadier, and more unshakable than anything dunya can offer. Dua after Fajr has a unique power because it comes at a time when the heart is undistracted, the soul is soft, and the day has not yet imposed its noise onto you. When you make dua consistently during this time, you are making space for Allah in your morning and in your life. And whenever you consistently make space for Allah, He fills that space with guidance, with peace, and with a sense of direction you cannot get from the world. Each morning, your dua becomes an anchor that steadies you before the waves of the day even begin. Instead of reacting from a place of fear or anxiety, you begin the day from a place of alignment, groundedness, and spiritual awareness. And with consistency, something beautiful happens. Your clarity grows. When you keep showing up before Allah, your heart starts seeing what your eyes cannot. You start recognizing what truly matters and what doesn't. Your priorities shift. Your worries lose their power. The things that used to overwhelm you begin to feel manageable. You realize that clarity is not simply understanding your situation. It is understanding your relationship with Allah within that situation. And dua after Fajr sharpens this understanding. It illuminates your path not by revealing the whole journey, but by giving you enough light to take the next step with confidence and trust. This clarity also reveals itself through the calmness that settles into your heart. It is the kind of calm that does not come from everything being perfect, but from knowing that you are not walking through your imperfections alone. It is a calm rooted in surrender, a calm that whispers, Allah is with me, so I will be okay. You begin to notice that the stress you used to carry doesn't weigh the same anymore. The emotional storms that used to shake you begin to lose their intensity. You rise from your dua with a heart that feels lighter, more stable, and more secure. Allah places sakina, divine tranquility, in the hearts of those who seek Him sincerely, and there is no tranquility like the tranquility that comes after Fajr dua. Over time, this practice gives birth to a spiritual strength that transforms the way you experience life. It is not the loud, forceful kind of strength people often seek. It is a quiet, inner strength that cannot be shaken by circumstances or pity. It is the strength to stay patient when the world is testing you, the strength to stay hopeful when nothing seems to be changing, the strength to remain grateful even in difficulty, and the strength to keep turning back to Allah even when everything inside you feels exhausted. This type of spiritual strength cannot be built in a moment. It is built through repetition, persistence, and consistency. And every morning, dua contributes another layer to this internal resilience. Your heart begins to develop a kind of spiritual muscle memory. Even when something unexpected happens during the day, your first instinct slowly becomes to turn to Allah, not panic. When you face disappointment, your heart whispers, Allah knows. When you encounter challenges, you say, Allah will make a way. This is not forced positivity. It is spiritual maturity. It is the result of a heart that has been trained through consistent dua to seek refuge in Allah before anything else. And among the greatest gifts Allah gives through this consistency is certainty. The more you show up to Him, the more certain you become of His presence, His wisdom, His timing, and His mercy. Your faith becomes less dependent on circumstances and more grounded in who He is. Even when you do not see immediate, your heart feels assured that Allah is working behind the scenes, arranging things in ways you cannot yet understand. That certainty itself becomes a source of deep, unshakable peace. In the end, consistent dua after Fajr is not merely a habit, it is a transformation. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you respond, and how you hope. It strengthens your connection with Allah in a way that carries you through every difficulty and every joy. It becomes the spiritual foundation upon which your entire day, and eventually your entire life, begins to rest. Trusting Allah's timing transforms desperation into hope and patience. It is one of the most profound shifts a human heart can experience. When you stop demanding that life unfold according to your schedule and instead surrender to the timing of the one who knows every hidden detail of your destiny, something inside you softens. The tension you've carried begins to loosen. The anxiety that once consumed your thoughts, you begin to breathe differently, think differently, and endure differently. Trusting Allah's timing is not passive. It is an act of deeply conscious faith. It is choosing to believe that Allah sees what you cannot, knows what you do not, and protects you from what you are unaware of. And when this trust settles firmly in your heart, the desperation you once felt transforms into a quiet, steady patience that can withstand any delay. Often, we think what we want must come now, or we will break. We believe that a delay means a denial, that unanswered prayers mean we are forgotten. But there is a wisdom in waiting that only reveals itself later. Allah delays things not to punish you, but to prepare you. He delays because you are not ready, or because what you are asking for is not ready for you. Sometimes He delays to protect you from a harm you would have run straight toward. Sometimes He delays to elevate you, to build spiritual muscle, to deepen your sincerity, or to align your heart with something better than what you originally wanted. What feels like a painful pause is often Allah reshaping you into the person who can carry the blessing without being crushed by it. Desperation comes from believing that the outcome depends on you. Hope comes from knowing that the outcome is in the hands of Allah. When you shift from one to the other, your heart changes. You no longer beg life to give you what you want. You ask Allah to give you what is best. You no longer obsess over timelines. You trust that Allah's timeline is never late and never early, but always exact and perfect. Your prayers stop being fueled by panic and instead become filled with peace. You begin to understand that Allah's timing is a form of divine compassion. He gives when giving is safe for you, and He withholds when withholding is a form of protection. This trust also transforms the way you experience waiting. Instead of seeing waiting as wasted time, you see it as sacred time. Time for growth. Time for reflection. Time for purification. Time to rely on Allah in ways you never would have if everything had come easily. The waiting becomes the womb that shapes a stronger, wiser, more resilient you. You begin to notice small blessings, small improvements, small moments of ease, signs from Allah that He is with you even before the final answer arrives. These signs remind you that the journey itself is part of the gift, not just the destination. As trust deepens, patience becomes easier, not because the situation suddenly becomes light, but because your heart becomes stronger. You learn to carry the same burden with a new sense of calm. Patience stops feeling like a punishment and begins to feel like a shield. You become less affected by other people's timelines, less pressured by social expectations, less shaken by disappointment. You stop measuring your worth by what you have or don't have, and begin measuring your growth by how close you remain to Allah during the wait. That closeness becomes your real blessing even before the outward blessing arrives. Trusting Allah's timing also brings an unexpected form of courage. When you truly trust that Allah's plan is better than your own, you are no longer afraid of what you lose or what you don't receive. You no longer panic when doors close because you know that Allah can open better doors effortlessly. You no longer break when something leaves because you trust that anything written for you will return or be replaced with something superior. This trust frees you from the fear of missing out. It frees you from regret. It frees you from the desperate chasing of things that were never meant to stay. You begin to move through life with dignity, serenity, and quiet confidence. And finally, trusting Allah's timing transforms your dua. Your prayers become less about demanding outcomes and more about seeking closeness, wisdom, and alignment with Allah's will. You begin to say, "Well, Allah, give me what is best for my heart, even if I do not understand it yet." This shift is powerful. It turns dua from a place of desperation into a place of empowerment. It turns waiting from a place of frustration into a place of faith. In the end, the person who trusts Allah's timing is never truly disappointed, because they know that whatever reaches them is meant for them, and whatever does not reach them was never theirs. That certainty is what turns desperation into hope, and hope into peace too. And with that patience comes a peace that nothing in this world can steal. When you surrender your life to Allah through dua, everything begins to align. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because your heart shifts into a state of trust that changes the way you experience everything around you. Surrendering through dua means finally releasing the illusion that you can carry your entire world on your own shoulders. It means acknowledging that you are limited and Allah is limitless. It means accepting that your vision is narrow, while Allah's wisdom sees far beyond what you can comprehend. This surrender is not weakness. It is the deepest form of strength a believer can possess. When your heart bows before Allah's, you rise into your day with a sense of grounding that dunya cannot shake. Surrender is when your dua stops being a wish list and becomes a conversation. You stop asking Allah to bend the world to your desires. Instead, you ask Him to bend your heart toward what is best. You begin to trust that Allah knows what you cannot see. The timing, the hidden blessings, the unseen dangers, the alternative paths that would have hurt you. This trust creates alignment. Suddenly, you are no longer fighting life. You are flowing with what Allah writes for you. Your heart becomes softer, more accepting, more patient, and more hopeful. The internal resistance that once made life heavy begins to fade, and what used to break you now strengthens. When you surrender your life to Allah through dua, your struggles start to feel purposeful instead of random. You no longer see your difficulties as punishments, but as invitations to grow closer to Him. You start recognizing that Allah is guiding you through every chapter, even the painful ones. You realize that the heartbreak was a redirect. The delay was a protection. The closed door was a mercy. This shift in perspective is one of the greatest forms of alignment. You begin to walk through life with a heart that sees beyond the surface. You start noticing Allah's signs, small, subtle, but unmistakably personal, a moment of peace, a softening of grief, an unexpected ease, a problem that resolves quietly. These signs remind you that surrender does not mean losing control. It means trusting the one who has always been in. Surrendering through dua also aligns your desires with what Allah knows is right for you. Often we cling to things that are not meant for us, and that clinging creates heartbreak. Dua helps you release this grip. It trains your heart to say, if it is good for me, let it come. If it is not, remove it gently. When this becomes your mindset, you protect yourself from unnecessary pain. Your expectations become healthier. Your attachments become lighter, and your heart becomes more balanced. You stop chasing people, opportunities. You start chasing Allah's pleasure, and everything meant for you begins to follow naturally. Another form of alignment appears in your reactions. When you surrender to Allah through dua, you become less reactive to life's chaos. The things that used to overwhelm you no longer hold the same power. The negativity of others doesn't shake your peace. The uncertainty of the future doesn't steal your sleep. You develop a kind of internal stability that comes only from knowing Allah is guiding every step. You carry yourself with a quiet strength, not because life is easy, but because you know Allah is with you. This surrender also realigns your priorities. What once seemed urgent no longer feels important. You stop wasting energy on things that drain your soul. You invest more in what nourishes your heart. Worship, good company, purposeful actions, gratitude. Your life begins to feel more intentional. There is more calm, more clarity, more meaning in your days. And even when challenges appear, you approach them with a sense of reliance that gives you resilience. Dua teaches you that you are never alone, and that realization transforms the way you face hardship. And perhaps the most beautiful alignment is internal. Your mind and soul begin to work together instead of pulling in different directions. Your heart trusts, your mind calms, your soul feels anchored. This alignment brings a peace that is not based on circumstances, but on connection. It is the peace of knowing that Allah is writing your story with precision, mercy, and love. When you surrender your life to Allah through dua, you begin to taste a kind of serenity that nothing in this world can buy. You begin to witness how He rearranges your life, Not always in the ways you expect, but always in the ways you need. And slowly, you learn that surrender is not the end of effort, it is the beginning of divine alignment. It is the shift that turns chaos into clarity, fear into certainty, and longing into contentment. It is the moment your heart finally rests in the truth that Allah has always been enough, and always will be.